All right, welcome back to Bob and Weave with Rob and Steve. Steve, why don't you tell the people what number episode we're on?
What up, what up, what up? This is like episode 700 and it's actually I want to say 16. It's going to be
Ooh,
16.
that's a close one. We're on number 17. It's our
Dang.
17th episode. Next one, it will be legal to vote.
Yeah, and other stuff too.
And lots of other stuff we can do legally. Well, the podcast can do legally. We've been able to do it legally all along.
Yeah. Dang, a podcast might get drafted. That's crazy.
It's got to register to get drafted at least. See if it's in the cards.
So what's going on, man? You're traveling tomorrow, huh?
Yep, doing the old trip to Detroit.
Oh, nice. Another just kind of destination getaway then, I take it?
Yeah, it's a nice little resort, beach town in Detroit. I think this is my first time going out in the summer. Going out for just a mortgage training thing, just staying on my toes, in the know, finger on the pulse, what's going on in the market. So it's usually not a whole bunch of fun, but I get to learn some stuff on there, and that's the good part of it. And getting away for a little bit, some isolation time isn't all bad. It's a quick trip. I'm going Wednesday to Friday, so just like a day and a half, really. And
nice. I got a buddy who lives out there, and he's really liking it.
I mean,
now that he has kids,
if it wasn't like super cold in the winter, that's kind of my issue with pretty much everywhere that's not Southern California. It just gets too cold.
I feel you.
Yeah, it's if it was warm, then yeah. If it was warm all the time like it is in August, sure. But yeah. I'd be like one of those snowbirds that like lives in. I heard there's a lot of people that live in like Michigan or Minneapolis or Michigan, and then they go down to Arizona for 3 months during the winter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, not a bad move. I mean, especially in Minnesota. I mean, what a great spot in the summertime. The mountains and lakes and
yeah, I did Minnesota. Cool. When was that? 2 months ago. I think it was in May. It was pretty nice. I mean, I didn't know much about Minnesota at all. I just know it's kind of up there, and they get a lot of snow, and that was like what I knew about it. But it was a nice city, and lots of greenery. Things were kept up, and lots going on. It was a much bigger city than I was anticipating. I thought it was going to be like Indianapolis, but it's bigger.
Yeah. Yeah, we connect through Minnesota a lot when flying to and from Boise. So I get the bird's eye view, and yeah, it looks like there's a lot going on. There's a real estate boom there 10 years ago, which wish I knew how to underwrite properties back then.
There's still a good amount of stuff going on out there. I remember when I was out there looking at property prices, and there's still some pretty affordable homes. And like I'm talking below $300,000, you can find a home. But there's also areas that are 1.6. So it's kind of in the middle of it's no Kentucky, where you can find a house for $100,000 or Arkansas, but it wasn't, like you said, a few years ago, and now it's pretty nice up there.
Yeah. I'm actually, speaking of Kentucky, I'm going out to Kentucky in like 5 weeks. Gonna do the Bourbon Trail.
Bourbon? You're gonna like drink a bunch of bourbon while you do it, or is it just called the Bourbon Trail?
They just call it that now because all these whiskey bourbon distilleries are kind of right in the same area, kind of what in the area where you have to be from to call it bourbon. Not Whiskey Trace, Buffalo Trace, Jim Beam, all those guys. Mm-hmm. So we're hitting up over the course of 2 days. We're going to go to eight distilleries. It's kind of funny. One of our distilleries, I want to say it's Four Roses. On the first day,
I heard of that one.
Ooh, that's a good bourbon. Yeah, Four Roses. But we're going to that one at 9 a.m. on day one.
Little breakfast whiskey.
Yeah. Are we to taste anything? I mean, who's going to be the first sip? Because that guy's going to get berated the rest of the trip. Here, take this shot.
It reminds me of one of my favorite New Girl episodes. I think it was Schmidt's bachelor party, and they go out to like Palm Springs on these like 3-wheel motorcycles, and they break down and like they stop at a bar, like a lagoon. We're gonna go in there and get some whiskey, and they're like, "You city boys, come out here with your ice cubes, interrupting our nice hot whiskeys." And they're out there just enjoying a warm whiskey, at 11 o'clock in the morning.
With your ice cubes.
Yeah, it was when I think it was filmed during like the drought that we had in California. It was a big deal, and so like they're in 100-degree heat and just drinking hot whiskey.
Gross. Oh my god, I can't think of anything less appealing on a hot day. Maybe chili. Maybe like some spicy chili. That would suck. Or soup.
But sometimes you gotta get a spicy chili because it makes you sweat, but a hot whiskey will not make you sweat. Just make you go.
Just make you puke. Well, I imagine there will be some vomiting on this trip. I mean, anytime you get 14 dudes together on a party bus and go to 8 distilleries in 48 hours, it's just a recipe for, there's going to be some upchuck.
Is this just a dude's trip, or is it a bachelor party or something? Or
bachelor party, yeah. One of my buddies from college, and they're in our fraternity. There were, he's friends with like 14 people from our fraternity still, and they're all on the, and family members of his too. So
yeah,
it's a pretty big group.
Well, that'll be fun.
He's also got 2 brothers, so that adds to the mix.
All right. Oh, and before I forget, to our listeners out there who might be listening to this for your first time, if you want to get more episodes, you can click the subscribe button, and you'll see them pop up in your feed. And if you want to get notified when we get releases, there's a little bell icon. You click on that bell, you'll get notification when our next episode is out.
Smash that subscribe. We'll have Jamie from we'll have him add some of those sound effects in the after edits. What's up, man? What are we talking today?
So I think we're going to stick pretty heavy real estate right now because I've got a friend who's looking at a Sub2 deal, and I know we've been talking about it a little bit, so I think we want to refresh her on Sub2, and then I have some questions on the specifics of it. And then we talked about doing a live underwrite, so finding a property, an inexpensive property, and that seems to have good cash flow. We're going to find out if it's actually a good deal, all the things you need to look into, not just, hey, the rent's higher than the mortgage payment, it's a good deal. There's other things you need to look into. So that's the 2 things I want to talk about today. But first, I want to talk about the Sub2. So I want to try and do it this time because you're the Sub2 king of the pod. And I want to see if I understand it fully. So what it is basically a buyer will go up to a seller who has a current mortgage. A lot of people who have mortgages right now have very low interest rates, so very favorable payments. Say that seller either can't get a buyer for what they want, they don't need the cash right now, they don't want the cash right now because of the tax ramifications, whatever it means, they don't need the cash for the property right now. They just want to offload the property. And so what you can do is instead of, buying the house, getting your own mortgage at today's interest rates, which are 6-7%, depending on what you're looking at, DSCR might be 8. And then you'll take over their mortgage and you can get a second to bridge the gap of what the equity is, or just leave it as is and say he wants the cash in 3 years, not right now instead. So you take over their mortgage payments. And you set up what's called a long-term escrow with some type of escrow company. I found out not all these companies who do this are escrow companies. So you send the payment to the escrow company. They have a little servicing fee. It's like $10-$20. And they will send the payment to the mortgage company. They usually do it by check because that's the only way to do it safely, legally, good for both parties. And then if there's any overage that you agreed upon in your sale, say you agreed to $500 more than what the mortgage payment was, they'll send a check to the mortgage company and $500 to the seller. I nail it?
You pretty much nailed it, bro.
Hell yeah. Okay. So my questions on this are, the first one is, I mentioned a couple reasons why someone would do a Sub2. I know you've personally had a couple of these, I think on both sides, which you've been the buyer and the seller. So what were the specifics on the 2 that you used, and why did the Sub2 make more sense than doing a regular sale?
Absolutely. So let's talk about this house called Poppy. So Robert helped me buy this house. It was our first house that we bought. We bought it for $330,000. We put about 40 grand into renovating it. We did a live-in BRRRR, which means, buy, renovate, refinance, rent out, repeat, right? So we lived in it, renovated it, took out a HELOC to renovate it, 40 grand. So our total into this house is 370. We did a cash out refi with another company, not with Rob, because we were looking for like a super high cash out amount or loan to value,
I will
basically.
say
So we got
this was back when I was retail. Now that I'm a broker, I have access to a lot more stuff. I could probably do it.
Mhm. Yeah. Yep, you were kind of tied to that one company you were at, and there was another, a bank locally that was doing 90 LTV at the time, which is like crazy. Even in those times, that was kind of nutty. But we did that, so we were able to cash out at like 425,000. So we got 40 grand out, based on our valuation, right? And we went and like bought other homes, and we turned that into an Airbnb, right? It was an Airbnb that we used the BRRRR model to create. And we kept that for about a year. And then we wanted to sell it to capture a lot of the equity out of it. We had even more equity, after a year. So we wanted to get that out. And we were only cash flowing like, I don't know, $300 to $500 a month on the Airbnb. And, it was pretty soon it was going to need an air conditioner. It was going to need another bathroom renovation. It was going to need a roof, so we started to look at it like, well, long term, probably something's going to happen that eats all of the 8 years previous cash flow. So so I give you all that detail so you kind of get an understanding of where we were in the moment, and what we were trying to achieve was we needed equity out. So at that same moment in time, an equivalent, a mortgage to buy the house would have been like 6.5%, 7%. So, for somebody to buy it from us, they would have basically offered us their number that would work for them, would have netted us $0 on the sale after realtor fees. So, to get equity out of it, we needed to sell it for like 475, which people were only going to be able to offer 425, and that's basically would have netted zero. So that was the advantage to selling on Sub2 at that moment, was because we could say, hey, if you buy it for 475, you basically give us a $50,000 down payment, and you take over the mortgage payments, and then our equity that's left over after the down payment was small. It was like 12 grand. We're going to carry that on a note at X% interest for 13 years. And
so
the mortgage also.
so you layered subject to with seller financing.
Yes, but it kind of wasn't a seller finance at the same time, because there's a note created that's in second position behind the mortgage that doesn't necessarily get filed as we're not officially a lien holder on the property. It's like a contract for deed. It's if they miss the payment, then we file that. We don't even need to file it, really. We just get the property back based on that note. That's kind of our legal device to say, hey, they haven't performed on this note. We get the property back, and we just continue making the mortgage payment. The mortgager, the lender, never even knows any of that happened, right?
I would say that if you have a note on a property and the seller is the lender, the other end of it, I would call it seller financing.
Sure.
Whatever else you would do with it.
For the sake of the conversation, yes, but in the HUD closing statement, that box was not checked, right? In this case, there's 7 different ways to kind of do that and structure it, and different title companies structure it different ways sometimes, or even some sophisticated sellers and buyers will want it structured a certain way. The title company that we use to close on that they were pretty insistent that it be done a certain way. And I was kind of at that time, I was kind of, whatever, because the people were selling it to, we really trust them. And we know them personally. So we kind of didn't get too nitpicky on how it was structured. So, we actually, in ours, we don't even have a contract for deed set up now. I'm sure that, and that's because we trust these buyers. We work with them on other stuff all the time and know them personally. So, we just know that it'll get worked out. Also, they manage it as an Airbnb. They were already managing it as an Airbnb before that for us. So, I mean, the performance is proven. I mean, that even during COVID, 2021 and early 2022, like when things were still hairy for COVID, it still performed really well. So,
So you sold it to the property managers, and the reason you did Sub2 is because you could get a lot higher value for it than what you could on the regular market, and it was more beneficial to the buyers.
Right, because if they bought it conventionally at 425, they would have had to put 20,000 or 20% down, right? Which is, let's do some quick math, 80 grand.
80 grand, yeah. So they had less down payment, a lower monthly,
and a lower monthly and lower overall interest over the life of the loan. So they basically bought the interest rate, and we got more net at closing. So it was a win-win.
Yeah.
Who they haven't had anything happen yet, but like it's on them. If something bad happens, if the AC goes out or whatever, they have two choices: fix it and keep the house, or say, I don't want to fix it. So like, I'm just not going to fix it. And therefore I can't have Airbnb guests. Therefore I can't make the payment. And we just get the house back. And then, we fix it.
My question with this would be, all right, so you've done this transaction. Who's on the deed after this is done? Who's on title of the property?
So in ours, the way that it works is that they immediately have their name on the deed now. So the buyers, there's three guys, and they have a partnership agreement, right? And their three names are on title, and mine is no longer. But my name is still on the mortgage. And there's one big technicality here too that you need to be really careful of when you're doing this stuff is the buyer needs to get insurance on the property, and they need to get the insurance in their name because they're on deed, but they need to name as additional insured. They need to name the previous owner or the seller, and they need to name additional insured the lender, the mortgage company, and that's really important. So that it doesn't raise red flags.
So does that new insurance policy get put, you have an escrow account with your mortgage that pays your taxes, insurance for you. Does that get put into the system to be paid with the mortgage?
So that's another one. That's a great question. So that depends on what bank is the lender. If it's a super large bank like a Chase, Wells Fargo, yes, absolutely. If it's a smaller bank, you could get away with doing it outside of escrow, and you just basically share the policy with them. If you have an email address for someone at the lender who has worked with you and is like your point of contact, you can typically get away with doing it outside because that does make it cleaner. It makes it easier to like understand what the buyer's payment is every month, because obviously every year it changes, right? Or as taxes increase, or in Idaho's case, increase and then decrease, as insurance prices go up and down and whatever. If you just pay for insurance outside of it, it's a lot simpler. But ours is in escrow, and because our third-party servicer is pretty good at tracking that stuff, as long as we keep them updated on, hey, we have this tax notice.
That's probably why you had to have your name as a beneficiary on there so that you could put it under your mortgage.
Yep. Okay. Yeah, because that's one thing that raises a red flag. If they say, hey, we got to notice that Stevens insurance policy was canceled, what's going on? They want to know that their asset is insured. And then if you say, oh, here's the new policy and it's just under Chris's name, it's like, well, who's Chris? Like, and then they say, well, what do you say? You sold this on subject to? Oh, no, we didn't qualify this buyer. We qualified you. And they can, do a due on sale. They can initiate the due on
Yeah,
sale.
that was my next question, because you've technically sold the property, and most mortgages come with a due on sale clause. If you sell the property, you have to pay off the mortgage. And so how do you avoid the due on sale clause?
So the bank that we use is kind of like a regional credit union. So they're small-ish, but medium-sized. They have hundreds of employees, but it's not like Chase that has tens of thousands, right? And tons of systems in place to catch these things. It's like it's still pretty, they're still pretty hands-on on a lot of the stuff. So they're not gonna, they don't have a system that runs title reports on all their properties that are on their books, right? They don't notice because the red flags aren't triggered. It's always getting paid, so that's a red flag that's not triggered. It's never late, so that's a red flag that's not triggered. And
so you're basically saying you've avoided the due on sale clause because they don't know.
Yeah, 100%. Yes, and this is legal, but it's also legal for banks to say we don't want anybody to do that. But they, they're responsible to find out about it. It's not like if we do it, we're in trouble.
The burden on is not on you to report it to them.
Exactly.
So they have to find out. I'm probably gonna go look at the last set of loan docs I had and see if I can find a due on sale clause and confirm everything you just said.
And we looked at ours in depth because it was our first time selling like that, and and it was our first time doing it for our personal property. I'd done it, as part of a company I was working at before. We would buy like that all the time and then turn around and wrap those terms and resell it. So, but this one was my personal name. So we looked at our documents, and it does say, due on sale clause. Another way you can get around it too, even if you do get red flagged and they say, hey, it's due on, you sold it, it's due. I've seen that happen to some colleagues of mine, and all they do is go back to the title company, undo the sale, basically, cancel it. And then they do a different type of contract. So now they're compliant and the bank can't force a sale anymore. And then what they do is just restructure it as a lease with option. So there's no due on sale if you lease with option, which means, hey, I'm going to lease it to you for X amount per month, which is the same number you had before, right? And then after 13 years or whatever number, or whatever duration you had decided on before, it's like you have the option to then buy it for X amount, which it comes out to being the same deal for the seller and the buyer as a subject to. The only difference is
who's on the title.
What's that?
It changes who's currently on the title.
So they can't capture depreciation, which in a lot of cases, a buyer will work depreciation into their offer number, right? And it was kind of interesting on this deal I did, Poppy, because I was upfront with them. Hey, you guys won't be able to get depreciation on this deal because I have already depreciated this property when I bought it. And, a year later, I did the depreciation and captured depreciation. So the IRS will notice if two people have captured 100% depreciation, both on the same property, they'll catch that. So, I was open about that. And then I think they just forgot about it, but I didn't know they forgot about it. And then they were like, well, shoot, that was worth $20K. We paid $20K too much on our down payment. And it's like, well, I don't know what to tell you. I guess you'll need to buy another property this year and factor that in.
Yeah. I was like, depreciation's usually either the largest or the second largest write-off you will get with your property.
Yep. Exactly.
Well, that's interesting. Okay, so real quick, I know you purchased a home using Sub2. Can you just describe the seller need in that situation?
Yeah, so this was another one where I was working with partners, and I'm not an equity holder anymore. Um, uh, so there was this grandma grandpa that, they bought a house near their one kid, because their one kid had kids. They wanted to be near the grandkids, so they bought in this town they really didn't want to live in at the height of the market, and they put 50 grand into renovating it. So they paid 425,000 for this house. They put 40 grand into it, and then they wanted to sell it for 475 to get their money back. But they were trying to sell it at the bottom of the market when interest rates were at the highest. So it was actually kind of timed at the same time, and similar numbers as Poppy, right? So I kind of talked them through, well, this is how I just sold a house, because I was in the same situation as you. It's an Airbnb. I wanted the cash out of it. They wanted to move to Texas because their kid had suddenly got a job and had just moved to Texas within like a 2-week period, and they were just stuck there in Idaho Falls. And didn't want to live there, weren't near the grandkids, couldn't buy a house down in Texas without selling this one. So that was their situation. So what we did was they also had a HELOC open on the property that they had taken out to pay off their cars and stuff. So that they had all those things at a lower interest rate. They paid off 2 cars and a 4x4, right? Like a sand dune buggy or whatever. So what we did was came in with like only 10 grand down for them. Because they had a VA loan option to buy a VA, a house down in Texas with a VA loan, 0 down, and they were seniors. Somehow they had some loan that they were qualified for and like ready to pull the trigger on. So we came in 10 grand down and just took over all their payments. And then we turned around and sold it on a Sub2. It was it's called a wraparound, right? So we bought it for 475 with 10 grand down. We sold it for 30 grand down. 0.01% higher interest rate than what we bought it from, that was on their loan that we took over, and a similar time frame to when it's due. So
That's interesting because VA loans are one of the few loans that are assumable. So they could have sold, if they could find a veteran buyer, they could have done a traditional sale.
it was a conventional loan that they had in that house, because they at least thought ahead in that fact of, well, if we do want to move and it's something, they recognized that it was a really good market, but they didn't realize it was going to tank so fast. But they were like, we don't want to get stuck here. So they didn't even buy it with a VA loan. They bought it conventionally, and they had put money down and everything.
Interesting.
They bought it with, a 5% down loan.
Just for listeners out there, you can use your VA loan twice. You can even have 2 VA loans at the same time, but you only have so much entitlement. So there's a calculation based on how much entitlement you can use, and that tells you how much down payment you're required to do. So they could have bought this house with a VA with 0% down and then moved somewhere else, and you got another VA. They might have had to put some money down on the second house based on how much entitlement they have left. You have to basically run it through a VA calculator, and it will tell you. But that's one of the common misconceptions about VA loans, is that you can't have 2 at the same time. And if you buy one house that's really expensive and you use up all of your entitlement, there's really no point to use a second VA loan on the second property, because sometimes you'll have to put 25% down instead of what a conventional would require.
Interesting. Yeah, that's good to know. I didn't even know that, and maybe they didn't know that. This was like a year and a half ago.
Most people don't.
That's wild. So they could have, yeah. They were they had it listed on there too that the loan was assumable, but I think they were running into a lot of trouble with that.
Assumable loans are very difficult. I've read into them a lot since they started coming out, and it's not a quick process. It's not 2 months. It can be 6 months to a year before your loan gets fully assumed. And
Yeah.
they like these giant companies have hired 3 people to be in their assumable loan division, and they intentionally make it difficult because they want people to refinance and use the higher rates.
Yeah.
But that's the big issue, is that it just takes forever to get it done.
That's kind of lame. Yeah, sounds a lot like trying to get rid of PMI.
Right. Yeah. You're just taking money out of your lender's pocket, so they're going to make it hard for you. But there's legal requirements they have to hit, like they have to respond in 45 days, so they respond in 42. Like that's the kind of stuff they're going to pull.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that's another good summary on Sub2 and how that works. I think it's really interesting. It sounds like there is a decent amount of risk that goes into doing a Sub2 deal, but it can definitely be, like you said, beneficial to both parties, be a win-win if you can get it done. And then there's just a contingency that if the lender does do a due on sale, you switch it to a lease to own. Well, cool.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, our second topic is we wanted to do a small house in the middle of America and see if we could pencil it out. So, for the sake of us not getting in trouble, we're just going to say it's in the Midwest somewhere. And do you have a calculator like up and running?
Yeah. Can I share my screen here?
I think you can. Go for it. So this property is a duplex, and the rent is $17.98 per month. So there's Unit A pays $8.99 a month. Unit B also pays $8.99 per month. And so it's It's a 6-bed, 2-bath. So they're each 3 ones.
Okay, sorry. Say that one more time. So let's run through the kind of the top line details here. So what was the list price?
List price is $91,500.
Okay, so let's see
And it's
here.
a
Does it need
2-unit
renovation?
property.
Okay. Does it need
I don't
renovation?
think not. It probably could, but it's okay the way it is. Doesn't
Okay,
need
so
it.
let's just say 2,500. Right. So that would be, let's say we ended up just taking that out of the purchase price. Let's say we ended up at 89,000 to buy it. We wouldn't need a hard money loan cost here. So our total investment's 91.5, and it's so unit 1 is a 3-1.
Steve, can you make sure you're talking in your mic when you're talking? Just a little bit quieter.
Yes.
Normal. All right. So yeah,
Okay.
both units are 3 ones. So they got 3 beds, 1 bath, and they're both being rented for $8.99.
Okay. And then let's see. Do you have data on the property tax per year?
Probably can. Give me a second.
And once we get all this data put in, then we can kind of talk through what all this stuff means.
All right. Skip property taxes for now, and I do not have information on insurance.
Okay, so I think for a duplex, you're looking at maybe one's in the Midwest, maybe 165. For gas and electric for a duplex, usually it's just the outside lighting is all, there's a light that's in each unit and at the front door.
So
and then
the owner tenants pay for gas, electricity. The owner pays water, sewer, trash.
Okay. And trash for that probably be $60 for a 2-unit. And then is this a class A, B, or C property? A meaning lawn and snow is taken care of by the landlord. B and C means it's more of a budget, tenants take care of it if there is a lawn.
It doesn't say, but it's not a huge yard. It looks pretty small, but I don't know. I would say let's assume that the landlord has to take care of the lawn, snow, and stuff like that.
Okay, so for a small property in the Midwest, I bet you could get it for like $25 to $30 a week. So that would come out to let's just say $125 a month. And then of course you're going to get a property manager at 9%. And then once again, vacancy and maintenance. these, so vacancy is, hey, if a tenant moves out and there's a month or two where you got to turn the unit over and advertise it and get somebody back in, that costs a few $100 plus there's no rent coming in. So you want to save for that each month and build it into your pro forma here. So what, give me a guesstimate on if it's a class B or C. Sounding like closer to B.
I think it's closer to B. Yeah. And taxes,
Okay.
I'd estimate $1,500 a year.
Okay, cool. And let's roll with that. I want to also make note for people listening too that if it's been $1,500, $1,450, like for the past 2-3 years, you got to remember too that the property hasn't been probably appraised or assessed lately. Depends on the state you're buying in, whether or not it's a non-disclosure state. And because if it's a disclosure state, that means you have to be open about how much you're buying it for. That's public domain, public knowledge or whatever, and public record. And they charge taxes based on the purchase price. So if it hasn't been bought in 20 years, and back then it was purchased for $5,000, and now you're purchasing it for $91,500, your taxes are going to go up.
Here's some interesting information. It was last sold in 2021 for only $1,500 less than what's listed for right now. So there's been pretty much no appreciation on it, and their taxes are currently $1,000 a year.
Perfect. So $1,500 then is a good.
I think one of the things that kind of raises red flag is if someone bought this in 2021, they probably got a screaming interest rate on it. And why the heck are they selling?
Yep. That would be a great question to ask the listing agent, just to see what isn't true. So they're never going to tell you, oh, the tenants don't pay, this is a bad neighborhood. They're going to say, oh, they're looking to invest in other things. But at least ask that question to get a good idea. But yeah, that's definitely a good yellow flag to have noticed and to question.
And on commercial deals, you can ask for like the business tax returns. It's like, prove it. Did you file that you had income for this? But for these residential ones, you can't really say, hey, give me your tax returns so I can see that you actually had income on this property.
Yeah, it kind of depends. I mean, you wouldn't do it now because you're not in contract yet. But once you're in contract, I would say if it's owned by an LLC, especially if it's owned by an LLC, you can ask, hey, can I see the tax return, or can I see the P&L?
Yeah. I'm just saying it's much
if they
more
don't
normal.
have one.
It's much more normal to get that on a commercial deal than a residential one.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, but a lot of but at the same time, a lot of these investors that own 20 of these, they will be able to keep track of that and have that document. But that's 25% of them. Most of these are going to be mom and pop owned, and they didn't really keep great track of it. But you can do other things too. Like maybe they had a different bank account for this, and they can show you bank statements, so you can kind of verify it's making money. During your due diligence period, you're definitely going to want, rent rolls and stuff, and check, validate that renters have been providing checks for rent and everything. If they can't show that, or worse, if during due diligence you're finding that they were lying during their in their ad or in their listing, well, then you're going to back out, and that's going to hurt them. So most sellers are incentivized to be honest be upfront in their listing.
I mean, anybody can make a rent roll in 5 minutes is kind of the issue. And so it's if they're going to choose to lie, it's very difficult to find that out until you actually buy the property. But I guess that could turn into a lawsuit if you buy a property and find out that they've lied to you about their disclosures.
Yes, it can, but by the time you've won that, it's like 5 years down the road, and so much headache and legal fees, and then collecting from somebody like that is impossible. So, it's kind of like you just Yeah. If they're unwilling to give anything at all, then walk away regardless. If they have really bad books, then they got to give bank statements or you back out, you know. So to avoid giving you bank statements, they're going to be able to pull the records of the checks that renters have given, whether that's printouts of them from their bank and they just give you the printouts of the checks, you know, stuff like that. So and the property manager for the property, if there is one, that keeps track of all that stuff. So
Yeah.
they're legally required to.
All right.
So anyways,
Okay. Exactly. Calculator.
yeah, diving in. So basically what we're showing here is two different things. We're showing the current pro forma analysis of how it's performing right now, and then the stabilized pro forma analysis, meaning you know, a year or two down the road when you've renewed leases and got things up to market rate and everything. So this is, you know, this is where that's coming from, is that your rent per month that we talked about, $8.99. This just kind of bumps it up by 10% because most of these mom and pops are going to be about 10% below market. But that's one thing you want to look at, is how far below market are their rents and how much are you comfortable bumping them? Because I've seen ones that, like, we're charging this guy $500 and, you know, market rent's $1,500. Well, you know, this guy's 89 years old. How much do you really want to bump it, right? So you might even hard enter that, hey, this guy's only going up to, you know, 950, but this tenant's moving out anyway. We're going to bump this one up to market rate of 1,500, right? Something like that. But let's just assume we can bump it 10% in next year. To get it up to market rate. You're going to see how it performs now and how it'll perform then. So, you know, your total investment, you know, you put 20% down, so your loan is 80% of the value of the property. So your down payment here, this is your principal left on the loan after your down payment, your interest rate, and your 30-year term. So that means your monthly mortgage is going to come out to like $511 roughly, if, you know, all these purchase price numbers and closing costs are accurate. And then that means that after rent and all your expenses, right, your property management, taxes, insurance, utilities, vacancy reserve, maintenance reserve, you know, you got about $1,096 left after those expenses, minus your mortgage, your monthly net. How does that make sense, actually?
I mean, it's a monthly NOI is 701 minus the mortgage payments. Yeah.
Sorry. Yep. I was looking at this 1,000 number. Yep. I need new glasses. So yeah, your monthly NOI, which is your net operating income, or how much cash you have left over after expenses before mortgage, right, is 701. 511 mortgage, you got 189 cash flow. So what does that mean in terms of a return? Your annualized return is going to be $2,200. You put 18,000 down, so you're looking at an annualized return of 12%. That's pretty damn good in terms of an investment. Getting a 12% return is pretty good.
I think one thing to consider with this is like this, like with this calculator, this property will be self-sufficient. All of your reserves are in there, maintenance reserves, vacancy reserves, all of the other stuff, property taxes, insurance, all that's paid for. So it's not like, oh, I'm only making $200 a month and I have to plan for unexpected stuff. We're already planning for unexpected things to happen, and this is money that you can take home regardless.
Yes, agreed. The only thing this doesn't take into account is what's called CapEx. So capital expenditures, big things, a new roof, a new HVAC system. You know, yes, you can kind of save. A lot of these B and C properties, the tenants are grateful for their low rent, so they fix the little things. So you don't really have to spend 180 every month, and you can kind of save up. But it's hard. It takes a while to save up $8,000 for a new HVAC system or a new roof. So, you know, typically what you want to plan for is, okay, I need to replace that roof every 20 years. I'm just going to refinance, cash out refi, and renovate the whole place between tenants at that point and take care of that CapEx and take care of it through a portion of the appreciation. right? But if you're buying this at 89 and it needs a new roof now, or the the water heaters and the HVAC system are both 20 years old, it might make sense to just go ahead and take care of those now in your loan, right? So you could get, you could get a loan for, you could say, hey, the purchase price is actually going to be 100,000, Mr. Seller, but I want you to fix those three things, right?
Mhm.
So now you've gone down to a 7.5% return, but you don't need to worry about those big expenses coming up.
Right. And is in your mind and what you learned, is there like the lowest percentage you would consider a profitable deal? Because obviously, like 1% is not something you want to do. So what's the number that you would kind of say this is good?
So for a Class A property, a 50 unit apartment complex that's brand new, I mean, 4 to 6% is going to be pretty enticing because the maintenance and all that's going to be low. For a 40, 50-year-old house that needs work, it's a Class B or C, and you're going to have problems with tenants being late, or a lot of turnover, or doors are going to need to get fixed all the time. I would say, yeah, between 12 and 20. I'd probably want this to be closer to 20%, simply because $189 a month on cash flow isn't life-changing, right? So at if we owned 10, 20 of these already and we were making $100,000 a year and needed, of just unneeded living expense cash, like then yeah, it makes sense to build these up. But in our point in time of like growth of trying to buy more of these, this one's not that sexy. Now, if you could raise rents immediately, this is a lot nicer, right? If you could raise rents right away, especially if you could raise them to like 1,200, then that's pretty sexy. $800 a month. So an $18,000 down payment, and you're making $800 a month. That's a 50% return. So over the course of the year, you're making $9,500 of positive cash flow. You've got half of your down payment back. It takes 2 years to get your down payment back. And then everything after that, technically, or not technically, but theoretically, would be, infinite return because you've got all your money back out.
Well, that's interesting. Okay, I think one of the things that I would look at on this is, I kind of proposed as a red flag earlier, is that they probably have a low interest rate on this, but if we also set up a subject to type financing, that would probably make this a heck of a lot better. So I mean, because of what I have, I can see they got a mortgage for $67,000 back in 2021. I'm going to guess that things at like a 4% interest rate. So that would change things pretty drastically. I don't know if you can put that in there, Steve. Just do nothing but change the interest rate to 5.5, because that'll be like kind of a blended rate between that and if we have to get a HELOC to bridge the gap. It's almost 20% annualized ROI right now. If we can do a subject to financing.
Yep. And that's definitely worth a phone call. I mean, if you're seeing a market like if you're targeting a city that you want these in, and you've gotten on all the wholesalers lists and you're looking at Zillow, you got notifications, and you have a spare 45 minutes every day, it's totally worth calling and asking, because this particular one that we're looking at, that you astutely recognized, they're probably just going to break even on a sale. They might be interested in entertaining a $15,000 down payment Sub2 with a 5-year, 10-year balloon where you have to refinance by, because they walk with nothing and get completely out of it, wash their hands of it, or they could get 15 grand and it's your problem now, kind of thing. So, but I tell you what, man,
Probably the thing is that this property's been listed for 230 days.
Yeah, I would call and I would ask, why is this not sold after 230 days? Is the price too high or something wrong with the property? He's going to say the price is too high. You're setting them up because they don't want to say, oh, it's fucked up. They don't want to say that. They're going to say it's probably priced a little too high, and but that's what the sellers want to get out of it, right? I assume it's on Zillow.
Yeah.
Yeah. The next question would be to the listing agent is, okay, well, I mean, I'm seeing that, it makes sense for me at like 72.5, because I want a 25% return, right? You're not going to say that. It makes sense for me at 72.5. Like, should I send an offer over at that amount, or you think they'd be more likely to just hang on to it, see what he says? Because if you can anchor him at, hey, they'd probably take 72, well, now you can present both offers. Well, I'll give you 72 cash and you have to write a check at closing, or, I've got this other offer that'll put 15K in your pocket if you could sell me your low rate. If you just go straight to would they subject to, the answer is always no, especially from a listing agent. That people fear what they don't understand, even though it would help them. That sounds like a
Gotcha.
vaccine metaphor.
All
Had to
right.
throw in some politics.
Had to. All right. Well, if you want to stop sharing your screen, we'll wrap things up. Unless you got anything else you want to talk about.
No, dude. If anybody wants that underwriting tool, we have versions of it that or at least I do. I don't know if you still do, but I have a version. I'd be happy to share people or help them underwrite. So yeah, if you need help with Sub2, call me. If you need help with any mortgage questions, Rob your lender is the guy.
Thanks. Well, see you next week. Same time, same rap channel. Love you, Mom.
Have fun at 8 Mile, bro. Love you, Miss
I
T.
will. All right. Bye.
Bye.